Who in here has caught a lake trout? Lots of people. What about a lake trout over 20 pounds? Few less hands. What about one over 30? 6 hands. 40? Over 40? 30, 45? 50? 35. Oh man, okay. All right, well maybe if you've caught a 50-pounder, maybe you should come do this presentation. I'm still chasing. My buddy that's caught a 37-pounder always reminds me that his is one pound bigger than mine, because biggest one I've caught is 36. But they're fun. It's a challenge. Some days you go out there and just get your butt kicked, you get skunked. Other days you can go out and catch 6, 7, 8, 9, sometimes double digits if you're really there on a special day. But kind of a little bit about me. This picture here in the top left is, I was probably 3 or 4 years old. I have a hard time remembering that far back. But my grandpa kind of took me under his wing and showed me the ropes, and now there's this addiction that I have to thank him for. But they're fun. The picture in the bottom right here is with kind of a 3-generation photo we got last September when we were out at Flaming Gorge. Me and my boy and my dad. That was pretty special to be a part of. I'm sure my grandpa was there as well in spirit and smiling down on us as well. But we caught some good fish over the last, we caught a lot of good fish back when I was in high school, 2005, 6, 7, that time frame. And they're just fun. There's never, when they're pulling drag and they're tugging on you, that feeling never has gotten old. So there's a few slides here with a bunch of pictures of buddies that we go out there with and just catching, trying to catch the biggest fish we can. There's Corey in all of his glory down there on the bottom middle. If I had the video of that actual picture, when Roger was taking the video of that, Corey was really struggling to even hold that fish up. How big was it, Corey?
Bigger than anything you got.
Okay. I think he said 34 pounds if they weighed it, but it was flopping around, and he's getting old and kind of fragile, so trying to hold a big fish so if you catch a 5-6 pound kokanee on his boat, you might have to hold it and take care of it, because he's getting a little old. Just some more good fish. The days that we catch, does this thing have a pointer on it? I don't want to break anything. There we go. That was last spring. The pictures that we get with double hookups that's kind of chaotic. Those were both trolling. There's some, that picture right there, we were jigging. That was the day before the Flaming Gorge Derby, and one of those fish was over 40 inches, and we couldn't record it because it was the day before the Derby started. So anyway, we just have good times catching fish. And here's some of the few things I've learned over the years. Make a plan and stick to that plan. I've had plenty of times where we're going out and you don't have a plan, and then if you're trolling for lake trout and you see a school of kokanee underneath you, and then everybody's like, oh, let's go catch kokanee. The lake trout aren't biting. So you flip everything out and then go try to chase kokanee. And then you're chasing kokanee and you got your lures at 30, 40 feet, and then you're graphing the bottom and you can see lake trout on the bottom. And then you switch back to the gear. I've been there, done that, and it's never quite as productive, or you're not as successful as if you were to have a plan that day and stick to that plan. So I'll go, talking about a plan, I'll go basically the day before. If you've been there for 2 or 3 days and you kind of get onto a pattern, you kind of have an idea of what to do the next day. And so with that plan, I'll get rods ready to go. We'll talk about that going forward. But study and learn the habits of big lakers. What do they like to do? What do they like to eat? Where do they like to hang out? At Flaming Gorge, there's a lot of structure. If you've been there, you've seen right outside of Lucerne Marina, there's a pretty, well-known area of lake right there. It's Linwood Bay, and it holds a lot of fish. And you'll see 20, 30, 50 boats out there, all trolling back and forth. Some of them are jigging, and there's a lot going on, especially in June, July, August, September. There'll be hundreds and hundreds of fish on some of these points. And they're there for a reason. They're spawning there. They're getting ready to spawn. And there's a lot of people out there. But that structure, there's shelves, points, anything that kind of where they can ambush their prey, whether it's kokanee or rainbows or whatever they're feeding on for that day, they'll sit there and ambush. And so when we're trolling, you'll see a lot of fish at 90 feet, 100 feet. Like, I don't just pick any spot on the lake and just start trolling. Just because you're trolling in 100 feet of water doesn't mean you're going to catch a lake trout. You got to kind of be where they are. Anyway, have your gear ready like I was talking about. We get that ready to go. If we're going to troll the next day, then I'll get all the trolling rods ready to rock and roll with flatfish, with spoons, with whatever we're going to troll for with that day, and then go out there and do that. If we're going to jig, I'll have the jigging rods ready to go. Sharpen your hooks up, get that all ready to rock and roll, and then you're ready for the next day. And then you have to locate fish, obviously. If you're fishing and there's nothing underneath you, you're not going to catch them. So a lot of the times, especially this time of year when they're a little more spread out, we'll spend the first 20, 30 minutes of the day, just sometimes hours, looking for one fish or two fish to sit on top of and jig. If you're on a trolling route, then we'll kind of go over that trolling route just to see if it's even worth dropping your gear down. And you got to find them. Wherever they are is wherever they are. And then you got to keep your tackle box open. I have 3 tackle boxes up here. You guys are more than welcome. After I'm done here, you can come and look at all the spoons or whatever tackle I have here that we use. There's not a whole lot. It's more, there's lots more colors than types of baits, but we've had success over the years with these kind of baits. Then don't be afraid to try new things. Sometimes people come up to you and be like, well, have you tried this? At Fish Lake, last year we were trolling for kokanee, and I saw this guy. He had a flasher, like a big, probably 6-7 inch flasher, Dodger type lure, and then a leader to a flatfish. And I thought that was the weirdest presentation, and maybe he was an old school dude that just knows how to catch them at Fish Lake, and obviously he knows more than me because we're still trying to figure that place out. But that was something new that I'd never seen before. So don't be afraid to try new things. Learn your electronics. We'll talk about that. I use Garmin electronics on my boat. Corey has the same, and we've kind of gotten used to the Navionics platform, where you can see basically 1-2-foot contours on the boat or on the bottom of these lakes that you're fishing. For kokanee, they're not really a structure type fish. They're more of an open water fish, so the mapping and the contours of the bottom that's not really going to help you for kokanee fishing per se. But for lake trout, they're very well. They're structure oriented. They're going to hang out. Very seldom do you see them, unless they're just cruising from one place to another. You're not going to see them out in just wide open water. And then if you're fishing the gorge a lot, expect the wind to blow, whether that's Strawberry or any of these places. Like, the wind is going to be a factor everywhere you go. keep a positive attitude and have fun, even if the wind's whipping and it kicks you off the lake. There's cool scenery out there. There's at Strawberry, you could go for a ride. There's plenty of things to do when the wind blows you off and Mother Nature wins for that day. Here you can see on here, this is how I kind of use my navionics when I'm fishing out there. This is a screenshot taken from my screen. And this is right here where my pointer is would be the kind of the marina maybe of Lucerne. And right outside of there, this kind of area is pretty common. A lot of people call it the boot because it kind of looks like a cowboy boot right there. And that's a lot of big fish have been caught there over the years. And there's drop-offs down into the deeper water, and all those lake trout will hang out on these shelves right here, all the way along this edge. I mean, this stretch of lake right here is about almost a mile long where you can just troll. Sometimes they're out here in the flats, but most often I see them right here on the edge, whether they're just off the edge or hanging out right on that shelf. That's where they like to be. And so whatever depth you're seeing the most fish at, I'll color coordinate my map. And so I don't have to run my downrigger. I don't have the fancy optimum downriggers on there that'll bottom track. They do have that technology. I just don't have that on my boat yet. And so I'll color coordinate a contour depth on the bottom of the lake so I don't have to move my downrigger balls up and down, and I can just troll. Whether it's 120 feet down there and you're seeing them, I can troll these right along this blue line right here. You can ask my wife when I have her trying to drive the boat and we're off course, she gets, why are we out here in the middle of wide open water? Get back on course. So just kidding. I was gonna say, don't let your wife drive the boat, but I'm just kidding. If you want to stay married, let her drive the boat. She's getting pretty good at backing in the trailer too, so I can't even complain about that. But if they're in 90 feet of water, set up, I know with the water dropping and the contours can change on there, and so you just have to adapt to it, but that's how I do it. And you can see on this trolling rod here that I have, there's this spoon on this particular rod, and that little spoon right there, it's only 2 inches long. And we've caught the biggest fish on my boat last year was 38 pounds, caught on a little 2-inch spoon. So they're not big presentations. Some of the stuff I have here is, these flatfish that people like to run off of steel line. Those are big baits. These big blades that we have, that's kind of obnoxious and noisy and loud and makes a lot of commotion down on the bottom, and it just depends on what they want for the day. And we'll talk about all these as we go through, but any questions so far? How are we going? Doing all right? Okay, so rods, rigging. Mama Hog Rods has very good lake trout rods for trolling. And so we use a lot of his rods. They have some in store, I believe, right, Vern? Yeah, he's nodding his head. They have the Mama Hog rods here. They have reels, they have line, everything you need to be able to go out and get set up. This is kind of how I've set my rods up. 15 pound to 20 pound for trolling. I use on here is 15 pound right now. And then for jigging, I have a velocity rod, one of Jared's new rods that he just barely came out with this year that has been tested and is tried and true already. But with that one, I have a smaller line counter on there, a smaller bait caster reel. It doesn't have to be a line counter. Anything that has a good drag that's able to, when these fish go on a run, that'll handle those big head shakes and the runs that they're going to go on. So a reel with a good drag, and then I use 40-pound test line with a 20-pound leader. And that's how I have this set up. Doesn't 20, 30, 40 feet of line for a leader is sufficient. So those are the trolling rods and the jigging rods, how I have those set up. This is a video of this rod when we were kind of testing the prototype that Jared had given me. One of my buddies went out there and he's got this one hooked up. Not a giant fish. I think it was like a 18, 19 pounder. But it's always fun battling these things when they're down there just tugging on you. When it's a big fish like that, they're in control. If you try to horse them and try to get them up quick, you can if it's a smaller fish. If it's a bigger fish and you try to do that, it'll either break you off, bend your hook. Sometimes had hooks bend out straight like an L. 25 pounds and bigger, they're kind of in control. So you just got to wear them out as best you can and get them up. So the lures, a bunch of these lures that I have that have worked a lot over the years. Flatfish, that's kind of the classic, used to be the only lure that people targeted. That and Rapalas. The old guys, my grandpa, he would have a tackle box just full of flatfish. He didn't have anything else. That's what we used. And they still work. There's a lot of other lures out there that also work now, and so those don't get used quite as much as they used to, but they still work. The Rapalas, swim baits, depending on time of the year, those are very, very productive. Like I said, these spoons, this box right here that I have, that thing is just chock full of spoons of different colors, different sizes. And they're also very, very productive. The blades, a lot of people, if you haven't been lake trout fishing for very long, you've probably seen these cowbells. A lot of people call them pop gear. They're just big blades. And usually we've tied a flatfish on the back end of it. Typically you put a tube jig down there. And then that just kind of follows these blades, and we run these right on the bottom, down in the mud. If you have shark weights on, if you can look at Corey's boat right there, he's got shark weights on there. I don't like to run those down in the mud because those are $120 a piece, and so I have downrigger balls that are 12 pounds, big round balls that are specifically for trolling for lake trout when you're dragging the bottom, getting down in the mud. Yeah. A lot of the times they get stuck in the rocks, but for the most part, it's at 90 plus feet. It's pretty sandy. For jigging's pretty, I'm going to say simple. What you use is basically the same thing, whether it's a tube jig, swim bait, something like that, but majority of guys will run tube jigs. There's some of them, if you've been out there a lot, you'll see some guys have these big, long 12-inch tube jigs. They make all different shapes and sizes, and we run typically the 6 to 7 inchers, and have been pretty successful with that. 1.5 ounce to 2 ounce jig head. When you're down there at 100 feet, if you have 1 ounce, it's kind of hard to feel the bottom. You can still feel it if it's a calm day, but if there's any chop or any wind or anything at all, like that extra 1 ounce to get to a 2 ounce jig head will allow you to feel that jig head down there on the bottom a little better. And we'll go over jigging here in a minute. So far, any questions on the lures or rod setups? Yeah, we got right here.
When you troll with that spoon, you have a downrigger, and how far back is that from the down?
He asked with the trolling with a spoon, if we use downriggers, and how far back. We'll go over that here in just a second. That slide right there will probably answer your question.
Are you tipping it with anything?
He asked if I use bait, tipping it with anything when we're trolling. I don't tip any of these where's it at? I have a scent that I put on my spoons and the flatfish and the tube jigs. And it's just Lunker lotion. I'll squirt a little bit of this, like a little goes a long way. It's not like I don't want everything. I don't know if you've ever been in my boat, it's kind of tidy and clean and everything has its place. I don't like greasy slime everywhere. And so I try to keep everything as clean as I can. When we're kokanee fishing, I don't put sand on my Dodgers or anything like that because I don't want to wipe it off after we're done. So I use scent, but most of the time running these without any scent, if you have the wrong scent for the day, if they don't like that scent, some people use garlic, there's anise, there's all these scents that you can try, bloody tuna. I mean, if you have the wrong scent for the day, then you're more likely going to get skunked. Guessing which scent they're going to, hone into for that day is going to be harder than actually just fishing. And so a lot of the times I don't even have any scent on my gear at all. Yeah, another question?
25 years ago, we used Storm, Big Macs and Little Macs. You ever hear about those? You ever see those anymore?
Storm?
Storm or Big Mac and Little Mac?
I have never heard of Storm. Do you have a picture of them? Did you bring some today?
I don't have a picture of them.
25 years ago, he said he used Storm lures. I don't know. Did they look like a fish? Is it like a big swim bait?
Yeah, it's just a straight, more like a Rapala, less like a flatfish.
Okay.
I'll show
Yeah.
you.
Are they still effective?
They were effective back then.
They were effective back then. They should still be effective. Well, the kind of the first method of choice back in the day was dragging still line. They didn't have all the fancy downriggers that they have nowadays, and so still line was the only way to get down to 100 feet and get your gear down there, and so it was very popular to do. And a lot of rocks. You had to let out like 500 feet of line behind your boat. It's kind of a pain in the butt. And then I literally had a leather glove. I remember vividly, depending on which side of the boat you're on, you had a leather glove. And you'd put that leather glove on, and if you got a snag, if you caught a rock or caught the bottom, you'd have to reach up with your hand and like wrap that line around your hand and then hold on to the rod and then just put your rod straight back and just drag it, and the boat would finally pull it loose. We had a heavy set of pliers on the boat to fix all the bent straight hooks. So it was quite my grandpa probably rolls over in his grave every time he sees us fishing out there now. It's like, you guys, you can't really fish. You have to have all these electronics and live scope and all the fancy things to catch fish now. You're not fishermen. Yeah, go ahead. Trolling board, yeah. He must have fished at Fish Lake. Yeah. A lot of the guys at Fish Lake I see will have these boards that he's talking about, and literally they'll hold the line with their hand, and I don't know, they call it plugging. Just trolling, and they literally will sit on the side of their boat and do this motion. And I've never tried it, but apparently it's effective. As far as trolling speeds, what your setback is, location. For flatfish, 50 to 150 feet back behind the ball, right on the bottom. The flatfish, the bigger flatfish at least, the smaller ones will kind of track right behind your ball. So you can get your ball a little closer to the bottom. With those bigger flatfish, like the T50 size flatfish, I'll try to keep my ball about 8 to 10 feet off the bottom, because those have a tendency to dive. And if the clips that they have on the downriggers aren't as, they're not as strong as a leather glove. And so if you get snagged up, you'll be running your downrigger ball up and down a lot, because they'll get snagged up more than you want. Rapalas, 2 to 4 miles an hour. I'm usually running those, with my main motor. In the shallows, in the springtime when the fish are up in the shallow, a a little better. We don't even use downriggers. We'll just troll right behind the boat to 250 feet, and just run those right behind the boat. If you see me there in the springtime, I've got 2 rods outside on these back 2 downriggers. I'll use the pole holders on the downriggers and run 2 rods right out the back, and then we'll have 2 more on planer boards that are further out the sides. We've got 4 rods running with these Rapalas or swim baits, and it's been, if they're up there, if they're in the shallows, it's pretty successful, pretty productive. Go ahead. He asked about outriggers. I do not have outriggers on my boat yet. I don't. This is Corey's boat. That's too sexy to be my boat. I don't have to compensate for anything. No, I have a Thunderjet. It doesn't have any outriggers yet. Maybe in the future. Maybe I'll have to get outriggers just for that comment. For the spoons, we run the spoons 1.7, 1.8, 1.9 miles an hour. Right on the bottom, we'll set the downrigger balls right in the mud, and they'll be 150 to 200 feet behind there. And they run right. Steve Davis is the guy that manufactures these. He lives down in St. George. But these spoons are they're very lightweight. They don't weigh a whole lot. And so they don't dive at all. They kind of just flutter. They call them flutter spoons. And they just kind of flip around down there. Very rarely do you get snagged up with these. I haven't been snagged up a whole lot with these spoons. And then the blades, if you're going to run blades, I have a certain rod that I have 4 blades because I run straight braid right down to this swivel that I have on here, 60-pound braid, and then the leader on this rod is like 30 pounds. I mean, it's a thick leader because these blades have a lot of drag, and if you catch a big fish on there, with the drag of those blades and how heavy they are, the odds that they're going to break you off if you're using 10, 12, 15-pound tests are pretty. Even if you get a snag with them, if you have 12-pound tests running these things, you're not getting those blades off the bottom, and they're like $50 a piece. So we run a lot heavier setups with that. Has anybody run those before? Big cowbells, quite a few. There's a few. And they work. They work good. They worked a lot better 6 years ago before everybody found out about them. 7, 10 years ago, the guides were using them, and then now a lot of people use them, and they kind of have lost their effectiveness on big fish. But they still work. Every once in a while, you'll catch a big one. So jigging. This is going to be hard with one hand. This is kind of the setup that we use. I like white tube jigs. A lot of guys catch them on green. I know there's a lot of buddies that have up there. They don't even have a white tube jig on their boat. They're all pro green, so they fish with watermelon colors or anything that's green, bright green, chartreuse sometimes. But we've had good luck with white, and if it ain't broke, don't fix it. So anyway, if I can do this here. When we're jigging, these tube jigs right here are sitting. Come on, baby. There we go. If my hand is the bottom of the lake, these tube jigs are right there. And I'm not jigging it, I'm not moving it. If the wind's blowing and your boat's moving it, try to hold it as steady as you can. It's just awkward and really boring until it's not. But it just sits right there on the bottom. I'll usually you can feel the jig head with your rod if you're down there on the bottom. When you lift I'll use this as this table right. So I'll use Corey's, the back of his boat right here so you guys can all see. So right there, if that jig's sitting on the bottom right there, this is gonna, like I tell guys, a 1/4 inch, 1/2 inch, and you're just bouncing it right there. Not even trying to move it really, just holding it right there. If there's a fish in the area and you kind of jig it up 1 foot or 2 feet, you can watch on your electronics and watch that fish swim away. I mean, they don't want, these big trophy lake trout have been caught so many times, they've seen so many presentations, they don't want it moving a lot. So when I'm on the boat, I'm right here. This is kind of where it's at. There's just a little bit, when that rod flexes up and you can feel that tube jig release off the bottom, hold it right there. 1/4 inch up off the bottom, that's all you want. Sometimes when Mother Nature's blowing, it's hard to keep it right there, and sometimes it'll be bouncing around. And you may catch one, you may not. But for the most part, like you gotta hold it steady. And like people think, well, that's really boring. You're just sitting out there bait fishing, just sitting there doing nothing. I'm like, that's literally all we're doing until there's a fish on the screen, and then you're really focused. If they're swimming off, sometimes on the live scope you can see, we have live scopes on our boat, and I'll run it sideways with the boat, and so if I have a guy on the port side and then one fishing on the starboard side, you'll be able to tell which side of the boat that fish is on. And so I'll tell whether it's Mark or one of my other buddies. I'm like, hey, he's on you. Okay, he's a foot up. I'm watching the live scope, kind of play-by-play action here a lot of the time. And a lot of the time we miss bites too because we're focused on that stupid screen. And they just come in and hit it, and it's 40% of the time, it's like, a lot of the bites you miss because you're just looking onto a screen. But I can tell which side of the boat they're on, and I'll be like, hey, he's on you, okay, he's coming over here. And you can see on there, if you're in 110 feet or less, once you get past 110, it's really hard on these, unless you have the big fancy live scope that's way expensive. But on our 34s that we have, it's hard to see past 110, so you just kind of have to hope they're in the area. But if you're in 60 feet of water, 70 feet of water, you can see your tube jig on the bottom, and you can see that fish swimming along the bottom. And if he's interested, if he's hungry, you'll almost watch it. Their tail will come up and their head will go down, and they'll kind of put their nose right down in the mud. And if you're watching the screen at that point, you're going to miss that fish. But when he's doing that, when he puts his nose in the mud, you better be ready. And the bite that you're going to feel, who in here has caught a perch or a crappie? Some small little panfish, that's all you're getting. These big fish, you think they're going to just come over and smack it and take it. It's crazy how light these bites are. And then with these reels, with the drag I was talking about, I have my drag pretty tight. It's hard to pull line out when I'm sitting there jigging. When a fish hits, I'll go through. Where's my little? There it is. Little pointer. Where's that one? Set the hook like a man or a woman, for that matter. You really gotta. It's like I tell people, it's like the Bassmaster Classics. You see those guys and they step back and jerk them. When you're down there deep, all that energy has to be transferred through that line down to your tube jig. And so if you have your drag loose, when you set the hook and they have it in their mouth, all that energy is going to get wasted on your drag, and you're not going to get a good hook set. So we tighten those drags down about as tight as it'll go. Get that hook set, and when you get a fish up off the bottom 10, 20 feet, they've kind of, if you can imagine being asleep and then getting jerked out of your bedroom, and you're like, it takes you a second to realize what the heck just happened. I feel like that's what goes on with these fish. It takes them, 3, 4, 5, 10 seconds sometimes to realize what the heck's going on. And once you get them 10, 20, 15 feet, up off the bottom, they're going to instantly, if it's a big fish, they're going to want to go right back to the bottom. And so in that time frame, after you hook one, you kind of got to remember there's a lot going on, so it's hard. But you loosen that drag up and get them so you can play with them and tire them out. If you don't, if you forget, they're going to break you off every time. That 20-pound test line that we use is still not enough to hold a 20-plus pound lake trout from diving. So, to go through the bullet points here, the ability to spot lock is crucial, especially in the wind. Staying on a point. Over the years, we've found these areas that are kind of travel corridors for these lakers, and they'll go, sometimes you'll go for 10, 15 minutes and not see a fish, and then you'll have 6 of them show up. And then be ready. If they're hungry, they're hungry. They're going to eat. If they're not, it doesn't matter what secret presentation you have, they're just not going to bite. And then having the ability to be patient. Honey holes and secret spots. Who has one of those? I don't know if I believe in those or not. Maybe for elk or maybe not. I don't know. Deer hunting, there might be some secret spots on the lake. I have probably 150 of these secret spots that are not really secret, because the fish are where they are. Even if it's your honey hole, if you're going to go and fish there, if there's no fish there, there's no sense in fishing there. Because they travel in the springtime. They've the same fish. This Aaron, the owner from Mama Hog, caught this fish in antelope, and it was like a 47 pound, it was a big fish, 48 pound fish. That same fish, another guide up in Buckboard caught that fish. That's like 17 miles away at different times of the year. And so these fish travel. They're not just hanging out in one little 100 square foot area. They're moving. In the springtime, they go north, or they're coming in the winter after they spawn. December, January, they start moving north, and then by April, May, this time of year, they start coming back down, and then they're going to end up back in Linwood, right where they spawn. And it's just kind of this pathway that a lot of them go south. A lot of them go down to Hideout and then into Sheep Creek, and then come back into the Linwood. But you just got to find them. Like I said, it's really boring until it's not. Jigging's, for me, is not you're just sitting there, spot locked. You can cook breakfast, you can hang out. If there's no fish on your graph, you can relax. When there's a fish on the screen, it's almost like your mind is getting tested because you're just locked on. You're just waiting for that smallest little tick, like the perch. And then I tell people, like I say, be locked on to the tip of your pole. When there's a fish on the screen, you watch with your eyes and the feel of your hands on your rod. It takes those 2 senses to really be quick on it. Sometimes you'll feel two little bites. What they do is they'll pick this, they come over there. If that tube jig's sitting there on the bottom like that, they come over and suck it up with their mouth, and in the same half a second, they'll spit it right back out. And so you'll feel this one little bite, one little tick when they suck it in, and then you'll feel another tick when they spit it out. And a lot of guys will set the hook on the second tick thinking that's another bite, and they swing and miss every time. Not all the time do they do that, but a lot of the times they suck it up and they spit it right back out. Sometimes they'll pick it up without you even moving it. I had this happen to me a couple weeks ago. They come over and they just pick it up without you even feeling anything, and all of a sudden that pressure on your rod just goes limp. And you can lift it up and you don't feel anything. So in that case, I reel down and just set the hook as hard as you can, because I call it a negative bite. where they just pick it up. But a lot of the times they bite it, and you got to be quick on the trigger. I give my buddy, where's he at? There's Marcus right there. White shorts back there. He 68 years old, 68 years young. How many bites did you get a couple weeks ago before you finally hooked one? 6, 7 bites maybe in 2 trips that we went up there. I mean, you got to be quick on the trigger because they don't give you a whole lot of time. And sometimes they'll come back and hit it twice or 3 times, depends on how aggressive they are, but a lot of the time you only get 1 shot. And then you got to really, set it hard. They got hard mouths, they're bony. If you ever felt the inside of a lake trout's mouth, it's bony, it's hard, you got to get that hook buried into them. Any questions so far? Clear as mud? Okay. After sitting on the bottom for 10, 20 minutes, not even that long, 5 minutes, 3 minutes, you'll kind of get to know what style of bottom you are, whether it's muddy, whether it's sandy, whether it's rocky. You'll be able to feel that with your rod, so you know what the bottom feels like. When you're sitting there on the bottom, and whether the boat's rocking a little bit or you're bouncing, you can feel the bottom. If you feel anything that does not feel like that, set the hook. There could be a fish, even with live scope, you still can't see everything. They'll come in from the side, they'll be hunkered down right into the mud. Sometimes you don't see them coming. Even with 2D, if you feel anything out of the normal, hook sets are free. Get that, just, even if it's, sometimes there's been several times where you can see on live scope that these fish are down there. And when you're locked onto your rod and you feel anything and you set the hook and then you look over, you didn't set the hook right, I'll look over and I'll see the fish that's suspended up off the bottom 2 or 3 feet. And maybe his fin just grazed my line just a little bit. Maybe his tail hit it. I don't know exactly what happens down there, but it wasn't a feeling that you get when you're sitting on the bottom. And so just, like I said, I tell guys all the time, they're free. If you question it all, don't question it all. Just set the hook. And then drag, we've already talked about the drag, how crucial that is. But that's about it. That's jigging 101 there's a lot of guys that are really good at it. There's a guide out there by the name of Jim Williams. If you want to get, cussed at all day long, to do it right or wrong, he'll tell you. Yeah, go ahead.
Sometimes they take 4 or 5 months, let them run until they start bubbling, and then you put them in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He was saying how when you're bringing in fish, they release their bubbles, right? That could be 3 or 4 minutes into the fight, and finally when they come up, their air bladder expands to where the point that they just kind of gas or burp, and then from there on it gets a little easier, but they still can go on a run when they get there. Any other questions on jigging? Trolling. Yeah, go ahead. He asked about the leader knot. I have a 40-pound braid, and then I tie what they call an FG knot or a double uni knot. There's a lot of different knots that you can tie your braid to your leader with. There's strength tests on YouTube that you can watch on this knot versus that knot. I've had success with the double uni knot. I just don't tie that one anymore because I've also had a few where you set the hook on a big fish and it breaks right there at your leader because it's too tight or whatever the case may be. The line's not strong enough. With this FG knot, it kind of works like a little, what do they call those? Japanese or Chinese China finger trap thing. That's how it kind of works with that knot. And so it doesn't really cut into your line as much as it just kind of pinches it together. And so that one works pretty good. That one's called an FG knot. And I have all my leaders tied with that at this point. It's kind of a pain in the butt knot to tie, but it works good. Any other questions?
How long is the leader? About 10 feet down?
He asked how long the leader is, 10, 12. I usually start with 20 feet, 20, 25 feet, something like that. I just kind of run out with my hands until I feel like it's good. But every time you cut a tube jig off or you get snagged up, you lose, 6 inches of line or whatever it is, and so it just slowly will, over time, will creep up. Then if I get to where I can see you see that it's only like a 6-7 foot leader, I'll cut it off and retie that, because I just feel like the Lakers are going to see my braided line, and maybe it doesn't matter because they'll bite something that's hooked to steel cable with beads and big blades hooked to it. But jigging, I feel like they're a little more line shy than they would be if you're trolling. Yeah, go ahead.
Color? As far as the leader goes, green, clear?
He asked about the color of the line. I use this clear. I don't know, where's Jared at? Corey, do you know if Seeger makes different colored line, or is it all the same color? I figured. I mean, it's all clear line. I know they have like a low visible green color, and I've never messed with any of that. It's all the way you've used is, and it's all fluorocarbon. Fluorocarbon has a little less stretch than mono, and so our leaders are all fluorocarbon. Go ahead. What was your?
That was it.
That was your question? Okay. Yeah.
Don't put any sense in the tube.
Like I said before, if it's the wrong scent, then you're going to have a long day. If you've ever been fishing with a guide up there, I mean, Jim Williams or any of these guys, they don't use much scent either. There's some people that'll put a chunk of sucker meat on the end of it. I haven't had any luck catching. You'll catch a lot of small pups with that type of setup. If you have bait on your hook, the pups go crazy over that. You can catch 20, 30, 40 pups a day. But with the big fish, they've kind of keen in on cut bait, on that kind of thing, and I haven't had as much luck doing that, if at all. I used to do that a lot, and then I took a trip with a guide up there, and he kind of showed us how to do it, and I was blown away at how underwhelming it is. Like, just there's no jigging, there's no technique. It's all just you set your tube jig a 1/4 inch off the bottom, and you just sit there, and that's it, and wait for the bite. And then there's a lot of people you'll see out there on their boats, and they'll be moving it up and down 2 or 3 feet. I used to be that guy, and I'd never caught a fish jig. And my wife bought me this custom rod for my birthday like 5 years ago, and the first 2 years it just collected dust because I didn't know how to jig. I caught one fish through the ice, pulling, kind of, if you're on the bottom and they're surrounding you, like some guys will start reeling really quick and get them to kind of play that chase game. I've had that work once. A lot of guys have that, that's the crazy thing about these fish is there's a lot of different ways to catch them. And so you never know. Any other questions on jigging?
How crucial is like having a live scope opposed to a 2D? Like if you just had 2D fish finders, like
He asked how crucial live scope is versus just regular 2D. If you're fishing with 2D, I do remember now, just when I just had 2D, I would kind of try to pick a flat versus sitting on an angle, because you can't see with your 2D, it's hard to see the bottom if you're on a hill at all. And so with those tactics, I would just pick a flat. But now 2D, like I still use 2D to this day, paired with live scope. So now I can kind of see which direction the fish is coming from. And sometimes the 2D, you'll see a fish that live scope doesn't see. and I'll be watching, I have on my boat, my 2D screen will be hooked to on the dash, and so I'll just look through that little clear plastic, and I'll sit right there, and I'll watch 2D more than I will the live scope, because everybody else wants to watch the live scope. And you can tell if there's a fish down there. You can tell how close to the bottom they are. 2D is really effective. So you don't have to have live scope. We've caught a lot of lake trout without live scope, just watching 2D, and you can tell how close. If they're getting, you're not going to be able to see them, put their tail up and put their head down, but you can kind of see that mark get closer and closer to the bottom and be ready. Yeah.
Sometimes when you're kind of trolling along and you see a big fish down there and you hit your spot lock button, by the time it kind of gets all spun back around, he's not there anymore. Is it a waste of time to sit and jig over in that spot? Do you have to be seeing them directly below you when you start jigging?
He asked, did anybody not hear that question? If you're trying to search for fish and if you go over one specific fish, I have a hard time spot locking on one fish, but there are days when it's been tough and it's a grind, and if you see one fish, like I'm going to turn back around and flip around and see if I can find him again. If you can stay on that fish, then it's a great idea to stay on him. If it's a one-off and you can't find him again, then that's probably not a great spot to spot lock. If it's a pathway or a little corridor or somewhere where there's fish traveling, depending on the lake, depending on the area of the lake, that may or may not be, beneficial. But if you're pulling straws at this point, if it's a tough day, you're going to do whatever you can to get on one. Yeah.
In your opinion, which is more effective, jigging or the trolling?
He asked, what's more effective, jigging or trolling? Depends on the day. In the morning, this time of year, I'll do both. Like we'll go and set out and troll around in the shallows in the mornings, and then by 8 o'clock, once that sun comes up a little more, those fish will move off deeper. And then we'll jig in the afternoon, or mid-morning to afternoon, and then in the evening, we'll go back to trolling. And so there's a lot of guys that are pro just doing trolling or just jigging. I have one buddy that doesn't like to troll at all. He will only jig. And there's days that we'll catch 4 or 5 fish compared to his 0 because he wouldn't troll. But there's days where jigging's way more effective, and trolling you're just, right after they get done spawning, trolling is it's pretty tough. So you got to, they're just kind of lazy, just sitting there, and if you can entice one to bite jigging, that's a little more effective. Anyway, going on, we'll talk about these voodoo topics here: the moon phase, the weather, the barometric pressure. There's always opinions on that, whether the full moon's good or bad. Whether if it's a storm's coming in, in my experience, when a storm's moving in and the pressure is dropping, lake trout turn off. They do not want anything to do with it. When that pressure bottoms out, right there, and then when it starts rising back up, when that storm moves out, or that pressure is rising, back up to a stable pressure is always good. But when that pressure is rising, they're going to start feeding, and you better have your boat in the water. Be ready for that, because it's sometimes I'll throw my tie over my shoulder. This is not gospel. This is not like end all be all. And sometimes if the pressure's falling, you can catch them too. It's just you can't tell them when they're supposed to be hungry. And sometimes you get, like the next one, bite windows. Sometimes you'll get half an hour a day. We've been out there and the bite's not till 2:30 in the afternoon. We've fished all day, fished hard, and you're like, oh crap. And then at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, something clicks and they just flip a switch and it's on for, sometimes it's 10 minutes, sometimes it's an hour. You just never know how long they're going to stay there and bite. With kokanee fishing and lake trout fishing, I always keep a log, a journal of where we're at, what time of day. My app that I use is called Angler's Log, and it tracks all that stuff, the moon phase, the weather, the barometric pressure, the time of day, the depth. I have to input all this information. But it's been helpful, learning where they're at certain times of year, where they're headed. You know, if I'm going up there in January, I know north of, you know, in Wyoming is probably where you're going to be fishing if you're up there in January or February, because they're not on the Utah side. Unless you're going down by the dam or hideout, I just haven't had as much success down there, so I don't know.
Can you say more about the moon phase, good or bad?
The moon phase he asked about. It's 3.5 hours away for me. I live in Salem, Utah, and so I'm not going to plan a trip around a full moon. I typically haven't. But if that's the only time I can go in that month, then we're going to go and just make the best of it. And usually with the moon, even in the summertime, we've noticed the 5 o'clock in the morning, 5:30 in the morning, you get, you know, the first half hour of daylight is all you get. And then you might as well go in and cook breakfast and go on a four-wheeler ride or something, because it's going to be tough to find. I mean, even catch one at that point. They just kind of disappear during the full moon. Has anybody else seen that? I like the new moons. I like, you know, half moons if I can, but we will fish a full moon if it's the only thing you got. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, can you talk more about where the fish are at, what time of year? You said
Yeah.
January, February, they're north lake. Where are they the rest of the time?
He asked about certain, you know, where the fish are at certain times of the year. They spawn in Linwood, most of them, a lot of them do, the big fish, and then they kind of disperse from there. So that's in November. So in late November, you know, Thanksgiving, before Christmas, you'll find them still there in Linwood. Even into January, they'll still be there, a few and far between. But once mid-January hits, you will not find a fish in Linwood, as many. You may find a couple, but not 2,000 of them that are stacked on these shelves. So they just disperse. So January, February, a lot of them are moving north up to buckboard. There's, if any of, I don't have a picture on here, but if any of you have fished buckboard, there's a lot of depth contours up there, a lot of shelves, a lot of area for these lakers to hang out at. Even going clear up to the confluence. I know guys that have caught them clear up there in the confluence. I mean, that's way north. That's 20 miles north of Lucerne. And they'll go up there, and then something clicks in maybe end of March, first part of April, and they'll start making their way back down. There'll still be fish up there in the summertime, but a lot of them, the big vast majority of them will start making their way back, and they'll hang out in Anvil Draw. There's a lot of fish in Anvil this time of year into May. I mean, once they start stocking the reservoir, they'll drop, 25,000 rainbows at Anvil boat launch, and every boat on the pond will be at Anvil boat launch. And everybody's just doing the same. They're just trolling these Rapalas. Look, anything that looks like a rainbow or a kokanee, and they're just trolling these. It's literally like, I feel like it's like strawberry and kokanee fishing. It's a madhouse of people right there, and you're dodging boats and traffic and trying to keep your lines in the water, and so it can be hectic. But from May clear till September, anywhere close to Lucerne, in Swim Beach, Rollins, Antelope, even into Sheep Creek, there's quite a few lake trout that hang out in Sheep Creek during the summertime. But yeah, does that kind of answer the question a little bit? Yeah, as far as time frame goes. Fish handling. This is one thing. What's the time here? What do we got? Oh, we're late. We're late. Sorry, Corey. I'll go over this real quick. Fish handling is very crucial. We have a big net. We don't have, that's a kokanee net, obviously, but the hoop on our nets are big. They can handle these big fish. When you get a big fish up off the bottom, it's going to be gassed. It's going to be, tired. And if I were to ask you to go run a marathon and right at the finish line tell you to hold your breath for 2 minutes, what are you going to tell me? Screw you, right? So when we get these fish to the surface, leave them in the net for a minute. I mean, it could be, you're going to be stoked. The video I have of my buddy that caught his first trophy lake trout, I could show that on here, but he'd probably get mad at me. But your emotions are running. You just caught a 25, 35 pound big fish. You're excited to get a picture and want to get it in the boat so it doesn't get away. Leave it in the net for a minute and a half. Get your tape measure ready. Get your camera ready. Have everything ready to rock and roll. So when you get that fish up and into your boat, you're not wasting time doing all the small stuff that you got to do, that you want to do, taking measurements and this and that. Because every second that fish is out of the water, he's basically holding his breath. 2 minutes is quite a long time. So we're trying to get it in and out as quick as possible, so somebody else down the road can catch that same fish of a lifetime and have that opportunity. You are allowed to keep one fish over 28 inches. To each their own, whatever. If you've caught one with a big flatfish and you got it stuck in the gills and it's bleeding crazy, that's part of the deal. So you may have to harvest that fish. But if you can release it, we recommend doing, releasing them back and making sure they're healthy. And when we do release them, like I can show you a video on here, I'm not holding them in the water. If they've only been out of the water for a minute, they're pretty active and flopping around still. We'll just take them and torpedo them right back in the lake. And then that shock of them hitting the water, they swim right back down. We've never had one fish go belly up because we've torpedoed it back in the lake. And so that's kind of how, that's how we've caught and been successful over the years. But I got to wrap this up. Any last final questions real quick before we...
So if you didn't see any problems with fishing in the summertime, like that fish is down there 50 degrees, you get up to 70-degree surface water.
He asked about the temperature in the surface during the summertime. Sometimes it's 73, 74 degrees. Fish handling at that point is way more crucial. You got to get them back as quick, and you'll see them. You can watch them on your screen or your live scope. They don't like that warm water, so they'll dive right back to the bottom. As far as that goes, they're pretty hardy, but at the same time, they're fragile. But thank you guys for showing up. Corey's up next. Our fish lake dates this year are the 9th through the 23rd. We'll be chasing kokanee and lake trout down there. So if you would like to book a trip with us, we only have a few two open dates left for now. But yeah, thank you guys for your